Welcome, everyone, to another edition of The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank, of Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure. We are going to talk travel right now, and I just love this show because it is a time to dream. So sit back and grab a cup of coffee, or if you're driving, pay attention to the road, but listen to all these wonderful things that we're going to talk about each and every Thursday. How have you been?
I've been doing well, thank you.
So I missed you. I know that you were out of town. We did a show, of course, but then you took off and now you're already back. What the heck?
Yes. I was out for a very brief, called a seminar at sea.
Is that for real? Was
for
it a
real.
boondoggle?
No. It was very nice. It was very nice. But it's a conference that's hosted on board a cruise ship.
Of course. Why not?
So, why not? So we left from Port Canaveral, which is the port for Orlando, Florida, and took a 3-night cruise to the Bahamas.
Oh, how lovely.
So, yeah, very nice. It was hot. It's a little hotter in Florida than it is here, although it's pretty hot here as well.
And
but,
it's humid in Florida.
Very humid. And every afternoon you'd get kind of that too much humidity in the sky and a little rainstorm.
Oh, okay.
But, it was a very, very nice trip and a very nice cruise.
So really only 3 days?
3 days, yep.
You're not used to something that quick.
No, it's actually a little too short.
Okay.
And those 3 and 4 night cruises are really designed for people who can drive to the port. They're not something that most people from the Midwest would take. It's a long flight to get down there and stuff. So you'd probably take a week-long cruise or something longer. But this was a conference for travel advisors, and so it made sense to go.
Is it the quote-unquote shoulder season, or why would this time
September
be chosen?
and October are actually very quiet times for cruising from Florida. Now, here's an interesting thing that folks up here might not realize, but when do you think the busiest cruise times of the year are for cruises from Florida?
The busiest time, probably in the winter.
No. So
What?
the busiest time is actually Christmas, number 1, Thanksgiving, number 2, and then the summer, number 3.
The summer?
When all the kids and all the schools in Florida are off, their families take cruises because it's really darn hot in Florida. And if you get on the ocean with a nice breeze, it's actually an improvement.
Oh.
So people in Florida don't have to escape the winter like we do. And so, the time that we think of as spring break, January, February, March, is not the peak season for cruising.
Did
it's
not
actually
know
summer.
that.
Yeah, summer cruises from Florida are packed to the gills, lots of families, lots of kids. But after Labor Day, when the kids go back to school, it gets a little quieter.
So did this cruise line that you were on, do they just do the 3-day cruises, or do they do longer ones?
No, the cruise line I was on is called MSC Cruises.
Okay.
And they do 3, 4, 7, and longer day cruises in the Caribbean. And they operate from Miami and Orlando or Port Canaveral. The port for Orlando is called Port Canaveral, and it's actually right by the Kennedy Space Center. They operate from Galveston, and they actually have a ship in New York. But they mostly do 7-night, 10-night, 3 and 4 night cruises, mostly to the Caribbean, a few cruises to Bermuda from New York, but their focus in the United States is on Caribbean cruises.
So what did you learn from this?
It was very interesting. MSC is a huge company that most of us have never heard of them. Yeah, and they were actually started back in the 1600s.
Okay, what?
They're an Italian family-owned company. They started in the 1600s, and they have been involved in cargo shipping for many, many years.
Okay.
Sometimes if you sit and watch a train go by, and you see all the containers on there,
Yes.
some of them will say MSC. And so that's actually the same company. Well, after a while, they got kind of tired, I think, of shipping containers, and they decided to get involved in the cruise industry in the late 1990s. And so they purchased one ship, decided they liked it, and then after the year 2000, they started to really grow. And at this point now, they have 23 cruise ships.
That's a lot.
Yep, they are one of the largest cruise lines in the world. They are the number 1 cruise line in Europe. They're the number 1 cruise line in the Middle East. They're a big cruise line in Asia, and their goal is to be the number 1 cruise line from the United States as well. So they have invested billions of dollars in brand new, very large, and very impressive cruise ships. And in the cruise industry, we have a couple different categories of cruises. We talk a lot about luxury cruises. A step down from there would be kind of the premium cruise lines. That would be companies like Princess Cruises, Celebrity Cruises, Holland America Line. And then there's a category that's called contemporary cruising. It kind of would describe sort of the mass market cruising. So it'd be companies like Norwegian Cruise Line, Carnival Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean Cruises, and MSC is the 4th company in that space. And so this cruise ship, which was called the MSC Seashore, carries about 5,000 passengers.
Whoa.
So it's a very big ship. In fact, it was the biggest cruise ship I've ever been on. And so the ship is really designed as a floating resort and very geared towards families. That would probably be their number 1 market, followed by, just couples traveling together. Now, we had the opportunity to travel in a special section of the ship.
Of course you did, Ted
called
Blake.
Called the MSC Yacht Club.
Oh.
And so the top 3 decks of the ship in the front are called the Yacht Club. And it's an area that only what they call members, so that would be people who have paid to stay in the Yacht Club, can enter. And there are about 150 staterooms there. They're all suites or junior suites. There is a private restaurant that's only for the Yacht Club. There is a beautiful lounge called the Top Sail Lounge that has an incredible panoramic view over the front of the ship.
Oh, wow.
That's only for passengers in the Yacht Club. And then there's a sun deck that, again, is only for Yacht Club members. And it has a pool, a couple hot tubs, a pool bar, an outdoor restaurant, plenty of very comfortable chairs with plush cushions on them, pergolas that you can sit under, and it all comes wrapped up with butler service. So it's a really neat luxury ship within a ship on a very large cruise line, that's geared towards a lower fare price category. And so it's very unique out there in the cruise industry. I was really impressed. I was very, very impressed by what a nice job.
Well, that's because you were in the Yacht Club.
Yeah,
part.
yeah, and absolutely. And I think, if folks are looking for a very value-priced cruise, MSC can be a great option. But the Yacht Club is actually a great value as well. And if you were to compare it to the suite categories on other ships, kind of in that same category, head and shoulders above the value that you'd receive in the Yacht Club. The experience is really the experience you'd have on a luxury cruise ship. But one of the neat things is that you can actually go out and explore the rest of the ship. So, for example, they have shows every night, big production shows. And that's one of the things that makes a large ship, one of those big kind of floating resorts, kind of neat. Well, the Yacht Club guests have a special seating area. And so instead of having to go early to get a seat or actually having to make a reservation, in this case, to go to the show, your butler just takes you down the elevator.
Takes you down.
And he finds you a seat
Your own
in the
special elevator, right?
Special elevator into the theater, and they have seats reserved for Yacht Club members. So it's really interesting. I think a lot of folks maybe don't realize that there is this opportunity to have that luxury experience at a pretty competitive price on a big cruise ship. And another advantage to this particular cruise and to this particular cruise line is that they have a private island in the Bahamas.
Oh, wow.
And many cruise lines do. Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Princess Celebrity, Norwegian, they all have private islands. And some of them are pretty impressive. Folks perhaps who have cruised or have heard about Royal Caribbeans, they call theirs the perfect day at Coco Cay. And it's a very impressive island. It actually has like an amusement park on it. It's a really neat experience. But I would say that MSC's private island, which is called Ocean Key, I would put that up there as one of the best private islands out there. And so what you do on a private island, you just have a relaxing day at the beach. And so with this particular island, the ship pulls up to a pier and docks. And that's a big advantage because some of the private islands you have to take a tender back and forth. And that just is time consuming.
Mm-hmm. Especially for that many people.
For that many people, yeah. And back in the day when cruise ships were smaller, it worked out perhaps a little bit better. But now with this dock there, you literally get off, you walk across the pier, and you're at the entrance pavilion to this beautiful, beautiful island. And it's a very interesting history to the island as well. It was being used for quite a long time as the base for some type of undersea mining. And eventually the mining company went out of business, and they just left this poor island littered with rusty debris and junk. And I mean, it was an abandoned wasteland. And so MSC purchased it, came in, cleaned it up, fixed it up, and they are really working hard to restore the ecosystem, both above the water and below the water. So a lot of the reefs that surround the island were destroyed. And so they're working to bring them back. And so it's really a neat experience. And you can learn a little bit about it when you're there. There's actually a lighthouse that you can climb. There are at least a dozen different beaches there. Some of them are in kind of a sheltered lagoon. So if you have kids and you want a little more controlled environment, there's that. But there are also some beaches along the ocean. You can rent wave runners and kayaks and go parasailing and, just a day at the beach. And again, to talk about the Yacht Club, they have their own private beach. It has nicer chairs than anybody else has. I'll say that. But it also has a full-service sit-down restaurant. And so you can walk up there in your bathing suit, sit down and order a lunch, and the waiter will bring it to you. There's bar service on the beach for the Yacht Club members. For everyone else, there are bars and restaurants, buffet restaurants scattered around the island. So it's a really neat experience. And there are quite a few cruises that MSC does where the ship actually spends the night at the private island.
Oh.
And you get 2 days there. And at night, that night when you're there, they do a really neat laser show from the lighthouse. which is kind of cool. But, imagine that, just sort of 2 days with your luxury floating hotel tied up alongside this beautiful, beautiful beach area. And so I think it is it is a really unique experience, and they're one of the only cruise lines that offers that overnight option at their private island.
So how much more would a yacht club ticket be than just a regular ticket? Is it 50%
Probably
more?
about double
Okay.
the price. Probably
Okay.
about double the price. So I would say for a week-long cruise in the yacht club, you could be looking at anywhere between $3,000 and $6,000 per person, depending on what time of the year you go, which particular stateroom you choose. And I think that is actually a really good value. And I think in particular, if you take a step back and you look at it compared to an equivalent resort vacation, a resort vacation at a land-based resort. And if you stay at an all-inclusive resort, meals and drinks are included. I would say the food on board the ship tends to probably be better overall than what you find at most resorts, and in particular most all-inclusive resorts, and many more options for entertainment. There is, of course, that full production show every night. Resorts don't have anything like that. And then several, sort of lounges. There was one that was a jazz lounge. There was one that was actually a 3-story atrium or 4-story atrium that was kind of like a dance club for the, for the younger set, not for old farts like me. And a cabaret, which was a really interesting little place. It was called the Cabaret Rouge. And every 15 minutes, the performers on stage would change. So the first performer was actually a couple. They were sort of like Cirque du Soleil performers. They would do those contortionist type things, and like he would hold her up and balance her on the top of his head and all that kind of stuff. And then along came a singer, kind of a jazz singer, and then there was a violin player, but she was kind of like a punk violin player, so she had an electric violin and was playing like Pink Floyd music. And then there was an accordion player playing like French accordion music, and then another singer. And so every 15 minutes the act changed. So if you didn't like it, you only had to wait 15 minutes, and you had another one. But it was a little 3-story nightclub, kind of very small. And, back in the day, it would have been a smoke-filled lounge. But, of course, there's no smoking on board cruise ships now. But just a neat place. You can have a drink after dinner and enjoy the show. That's the advantage to those large cruise ships, is that there are so many different venues. There's a great water park on this cruise ship for families. And there's a great kids club. And actually, they will take kids as young as a few weeks old, and they'll babysit them. They'll change their diapers. So if mom and dad want to go to dinner and leave the kids in trusted hands, you can do that. And up from basically 0 through 17, they have a whole variety of programs for kids and teenagers. But then, in the evening or during the day, you can go back to your little retreat and enjoy kind of a much more serene and relaxed experience than you would find on the big ship. But you still have access to all those big ship amenities. So I think they did a really great job of kind of threading the needle there and creating this really unique experience.
How do you think they came up with all these different concepts? It almost sounds like they're a hybrid of many other cruise lines.
Yeah, well, I think they started a little bit later, and so they looked at what was out there and maybe took some of the best from each. The cruise industry has really been evolving. And the modern cruise ships of every caliber, from the contemporary cruise ships to the premium cruise ships to the luxury cruise ships, there is just so much out there that's been added to cruise ships. And I was joking on the ship, and I probably shouldn't have said this because it'll probably come true, but I think at some point somebody's going to make an indoor ski hill on a cruise ship. There's an ice rink on a cruise ship now. So there is kind of everything out there. This particular ship doesn't have one, but many of the MSC ships have bowling alleys on board. And so there's a lot to do. And this is resort type cruising. This is where you're cruising to enjoy the weather and to enjoy kind of a relaxing family vacation. It's not like going to Alaska or Europe where you're going on a destination cruise and you're really focused on the destination, and maybe the ship itself is a little bit secondary. For this type of resort cruising in the Caribbean, the ship is really the main reason you're going. And I thought they did just a great job across the board on delivering a great experience. And in particular, the Yacht Club is something I would really recommend to folks. And of course, we're happy to explain more, and I've got some cool pictures that I can show people, but it is interesting that the Yacht Club is very popular, so it oftentimes sells out first. Well, 200 cabins versus 2,000 cabins, so they're going to go first. But there are still opportunities out there next spring if people are interested in getting away, or certainly further into the future as well.
So where in particular did this cruise go? I know it was a short one.
So we went to Nassau in the Bahamas, the private island, and back. and that was it. So very short.
Very short. But was it relaxing for you?
It was very relaxing. Now, this was a seminar. This was a conference. So both mornings from 8 until noon, I was in meetings and conferences and learning. And one of them, we took a tour of the islands. So, I didn't have 3 uninterrupted days to relax, but I still had enough time to relax and enjoy. Great food, great restaurant. Staff really take good care of you. So of places you would have to go for a conference, I would say they did a pretty nice job of giving you a chance to relax as well.
So was this an actual cruise, or was it just made up entirely of travel advisors?
No, this was a regular cruise.
Okay.
And there was a small group of folks. The cruise line invited some people to experience the yacht club so they could learn a little bit more about it, because it isn't well known. This isn't a cruise line that puts a lot of money into consumer advertising like some of the other cruise lines. So consumers don't know that they exist. They're relatively new in the grand scheme of things, and so this is an opportunity for them to kind of showcase their product to travel agents. And travel agents sell about 75% of all cruises in the United States. So they're a very, very important distribution channel for cruises. And so it was very important for them to share this with us.
Well, I love that it really was intriguing to you, and you were impressed by the job they did.
Yeah, and I've been on a lot of cruises, so it takes a little bit to impress me, and they did a nice job.
Wonderful. Ted, how could people get a hold of you, please?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me is to call my office at 651-964-8245. You can also stop by if you're up in Hudson. We're located at 206 Locust Street between Mickelson Drug and the Kanoki's Chocolate Shop. Or you can visit my website, tedblanktravel.com, and on there you can just request an appointment. We'll give you a call and schedule it at a time that works for you.
So great to see you. MSC Cruises. And we're going to hear more about them in the future, I bet.
I think we will.
Yes. Great to see you. This is called The Travel Show with your host, Ted Blank of Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventure on AM 1460 and FM 97.7 KDWA in Hastings. This travel show has been brought to you by Ted Blank Luxury Travel and Adventures.